All right, so picture this a genius who chains his mug to a radiator. Like, seriously.
Sounds a bit, eccentric, right?
Totally. But that was Alan Turing for you. Apparently, he was terrified someone would steal his tea. And it's these little quirks that make his story so fascinating, even beyond the whole Enigma code-breaking thing, which most people know him for.
It really does make you wonder about the mind behind it all, doesn't it? This
Yeah.
incredible blend of logic and, well, let's call it whimsy.
Exactly. So today, we're going deep on Alan Turing, beyond the imitation game version of his life. And we're lucky to have some amazing sources to work with, his letters, biographies, even some of his technical papers, ready to uncover the man behind the myth.
It's a fascinating story. To truly understand Turing, we need to go back to the beginning.
Okay, rewind time. London, 1912. What was his childhood like?
Imagine a world on the brink of change, right? And
Mhm.
into this world enters Alan Matheson Turing. But his upbringing wasn't exactly typical, not with his father working in the Indian civil service.
So his parents were abroad a lot.
Quite often, actually. Turing and his older brother were mainly raised by a retired military couple. But even from a young age, Turing's brilliance was obvious.
Really? How so?
There are stories of his headmistress, even back in primary school, calling him a genius. Not your average student, clearly.
Wow, a genius from the get-go. But I've heard it was at boarding school, at Sherborne, where things really took a turn. He met Christopher Morcom, right? And that friendship had a huge impact on him.
It did. See, Morcom was a kindred spirit. They shared this incredible passion for science, constantly pushing each other intellectually. But then tragedy struck. Turing was just 18 when Morcom died suddenly. Bovine tuberculosis.
Oh, wow, that's awful to lose someone that close, especially at that age.
It's devastating. And you can see the impact of this loss in Turing's letters, especially those he wrote to Morcom's mother. He was determined to achieve everything they dreamed of together, almost like he was carrying the torch for both of them.
That's incredibly sad, but also inspiring in a way.
It is. And it seems this profound loss fueled Turing's drive to unravel the mysteries of life, perhaps even pushing him towards exploring what was computable, what was provable.
So this profound loss really shapes Turing's journey, but he had this intense intellectual curiosity, and it didn't just disappear with Morcom's death. He ends up at Cambridge, right?
He does. King's College, to be precise, and he thrives there. Graduates with first-class honors in mathematics.
Okay, but this is Turing we're talking about. It wasn't just textbook math equations for him, was it?
Not even close. This is where things get really interesting. Even before the war, Turing was already grappling with ideas that would lay the foundation for modern computer science.
Hold on. Before the war, computers as we know them didn't even exist then. What was he working on?
Well, in 1936, he publishes a paper. It's called On Computable Numbers. And let me tell you, it's a tough read, even for mathematicians.
I can imagine.
But the central idea was revolutionary. Turing proposed a theoretical machine, what we now call the Turing machine, that could solve any problem you could express as a set of instructions.
So it's like he created a blueprint for the computer, but in this abstract, theoretical way.
Exactly. It was groundbreaking. Then, of course, the war breaks out, and Turing's recruited to Bletchley Park to break codes.
Which is what he's most famous for, cracking the Enigma code.
Right. But even at Bletchley, Turing's work went far beyond Enigma.
Really? What else was he doing there?
Well, for one, he developed a statistical technique called banbarismus, which sounds like something out of a spy movie.
Empirismus, what is that?
It used probability theory to eliminate potential Enigma machine settings. Basically, it dramatically sped up the code-breaking process.
So it was like a shortcut for cracking a code.
Exactly. But Turing's ingenuity didn't stop there. He was already looking ahead, thinking about secure communication in a post-war world.
I never thought about that, like what we take for granted today.
Right. But Turing was ahead of his time. He worked on early speech encryption devices. In fact, he created one called Delilah, all in an attempt to make phone calls truly private.
Wow, the man was nonstop. Although I have read that he was also a pretty serious athlete. A marathon runner, in fact.
It's true. He had incredible stamina, both mentally and physically. And, those runs might have been his way of dealing with the pressure of Bletchley Park. The weight of the war was on his shoulders.
I can only imagine. But even after the war, Turing kept pushing the boundaries of computing. That's where the ACE comes in, right? The automatic computing engine.
That's right. Turing envisioned a machine that could store programs and data in its memory, a completely radical idea at the time.
So he's taking his theoretical Turing machine and trying to make it real.
Exactly. He was laying the groundwork for the computers we use today, decades before they existed. He joined the National Physical Laboratory to work on the ACE, one of the very first designs for a stored program computer.
It's incredible how he was able to think so far ahead.
It is. And as if that wasn't enough, he later moved to the University of Manchester, where he plays a crucial role in developing the Manchester Mark I, another groundbreaking stored program computer.
And this is where things get really interesting, even philosophical. This whole "can machines think" question that Turing tackled head on.
Ah, yes, the Turing test, his most famous thought experiment.
Right. The one where if you can't tell if you're talking to a human or a computer, then the machine is essentially thinking.
Exactly. Deceptively simple, but it's fueled decades of debate about consciousness and whether machines can truly possess it.
I mean, it's a question we're still grappling with today, with all the advancements in AI. And get this, Turing even designed a chess-playing program before computers were powerful enough to run it.
You're talking about Turochamp. Since the computers back then couldn't handle the complexity of chess, Turing essentially acted as the computer himself. He meticulously followed his program's logic to make moves. He even documented one of these games. It gives you a glimpse of his playful side, even as he was pondering these profound questions about intelligence.
It's amazing how his mind worked. But Turing's curiosity wasn't just limited to the digital world. He was also captivated by patterns in nature, which seems like a complete 180 from the world of computers.
It does, doesn't it? But that was Turing, always seeking patterns, always looking for the underlying order in things.
So we've got Turing, this code-breaking computer genius, fascinated by things like, what, zebra stripes and leopard spots?
It does seem like a bit of a leap, doesn't it? But Turing was always searching for those underlying patterns, the hidden order in things.
So he was basically looking for the code, the algorithm, behind a leopard's spots.
Exactly. He was captivated by how these complex patterns, these intricate designs, could emerge from seemingly random processes.
Okay, so how did he even begin to approach that?
Well, think about it like this. Imagine dropping some ink into water. It doesn't just vanish, does it? It spreads out, creates these intricate swirls and patterns. Turing saw a similar principle at work in biology.
So he was looking for the mathematical underpinnings of these natural patterns.
Precisely. In 1952, he publishes this groundbreaking paper, The Chemical Basis of Morphogenesis.
Catchy title.
Right. Now, the paper itself is incredibly complex, full of equations and mathematical models. But the core idea is this simple chemical reactions, just by interacting with each other across space, can create those mind-boggling patterns we see in nature.
So he's basically saying that the same kind of logic that governs computers could also explain how a leopard gets its spots.
In essence, yes. He even developed equations to model how these patterns could emerge over time.
It's incredible how he could go from code breaking to pondering the patterns on a seashell.
It speaks to the breadth of his genius, doesn't it? And the thing is, his work on morphogenesis, it wasn't just some intellectual curiosity. It still resonates with scientists today.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. They're using his models to understand all sorts of biological patterns. How seashells get their spirals, how leaves develop veins, even those leopard spots. It's a testament to how far ahead of his time he truly was. But sadly, this brings us to a much darker chapter in Turing's story.
1952, right? The same year he publishes this groundbreaking work, he's arrested. And not for anything to do with his research. He was arrested simply for being gay, which was illegal in Britain at the time.
It was a stark reminder of the prejudices of that era. He was convicted of gross indecency. Can you imagine?
It's just heartbreaking. What happened to him?
He was given a horrific choice. Prison or chemical castration. He chose the hormone treatment.
I can't imagine what that must have done to him, both physically and emotionally.
It was a brutal sentence.
Yeah.
And on top of everything else, they stripped him of his security clearance, preventing him from continuing his work with the government. A tragic fall from grace for someone who had contributed so much.
And just 2 years later, in 1954, he was found dead. Cyanide poisoning. Officially ruled a suicide.
There's a lingering sadness, a sense of injustice, knowing that his genius was cut short, and under such circumstances.
The circumstances of his death, they're still a bit of a mystery, aren't they?
They are. That half-eaten apple found by his side has become almost symbolic. Some believe he laced it with cyanide. but we may never know for sure.
It's a story that really makes you think, doesn't it? The brilliance, the tragedy, the injustice of it all. But I'm glad that there's been a shift in recent years to recognize his legacy.
Absolutely. The official apology from the British government in 2009, the royal pardon in 2013, those were important steps, finally acknowledging the horrific way he was treated.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the life of Alan Turing, what are we left with?
I think Turing's life is a powerful reminder that brilliance can emerge from the most unexpected places. And that true genius, it often goes beyond the boundaries of a single field. Here's a man who broke codes, imagined the future of computing, and even sought to understand the very patterns of nature.
He challenged us to think differently, to question the line between human and machine, to really consider what it means to think.
Precisely. He left an indelible mark on the world. And I can't help but wonder, what would he be doing today if things had been different?
What would he be working on? What problems would he be trying to solve? It's a question worth pondering.
It is. One thing's for certain. The world is a far more interesting, a far richer place because of Alan Turing.